And it wouldn't be an episode of What the Decks without a good day from Jake and Chat. Glad to see you there. So, with that, let's kick off the day. Welcome to What the Decks, where over the course of a lunch hour, we take the idea for a deck build from Lunchbox to Deckbox. I'm your host, Skylar, and today we're tackling Skittershank's Clawpack plus Hungering Parasite. Now, this is a build that I have been particularly excited to jump into at some point in time. It's been on my list of builds to get to, and it's time. It's just simply one where, as long as the show has been going on, I've had requests week to week, which has been awesome. And this is on my list of things that I'm really curious about. I've heard murmurs that it's a serious pairing. Not that the pairings handled on the show aren't serious, but that there might be some strong competitive edge to this deck, which the deck I haven't been able to put down on the show has been Bloodthirsty Hosts. So this is, I think, the third time on the show we've tackled Hungering Parasite. So originally we tried a build with the Plague Rats, whose name is escaping me at the moment. Oh no, how are they escaping me? Well, hold on. That can't stand. It is Plaguepack, Skabbix Plaguepack. There we go. So when we did that, that was a lot of me first diving into Hungering Parasite. And it's not a great fit with that warband, which we discussed in the field report that followed later. Skabbix, yeah, I got there. But then what we were able to do is we were able to take what we learned and apply it to Crimson Court. And Crimson Court was a warband that was submitted, request. I could pick what I paired with them, but that request came from listener Jake, or viewer Jake, and I haven't been able to put it down. So I have a lot of lessons learned with Hungering Parasite is what that's all to say. So I'm really excited to take a second or third, I suppose, look at Hungering Parasite, this far down the line of it being out and my having experience with it and seeing, what really is here with this Skittershank's Clawpack pairing. And if I find it to be as captivating as I have Bloodthirsty Hosts. But before we get to that, we get the pleasure of diving into Stampede of the Void Bellow. So this is Grashrax Despoilers plus Void Curse Thralls. So this was the last build that we did on the show, live build. And today we get to see how it went. Now, if you're tuning in for the first time, we also have a backlog of 19 sessions so far. So this is the 20th episode, which is a milestone I was looking forward to announcing, as we're doing today's show. It's a milestone that I'm excited to be at. When I started this show, I did not know how long I would carry the show on, if it would fall in its face. And I can confidently say that it has found the success I hoped it would find. And it has landed a special place in my, weekly life, and is something that I continue to enjoy as a project and will continue for the foreseeable future. I'm really excited to be able to do these builds with you, the community, and to get submissions. So anytime you have a warband you want something built with, a pairing you want to see built with something, the two together, you can totally request. That Skabbix Plaguepack build that we did first time I tried out Hungering Parasite here was a full request, Skabbix plus Hungering Parasite, right? So we can explore builds together on the show, and we can explore what you've built as well. If you would like to send in something you've already built, we can review that on the show. So last week was the Shadeborn plus Daring Delvers, and that was a lot of fun as well. That was the Root Maze Shades. Now, I believe I ended up getting a write-in from that individual. So a little bit of just a extended community shout out here. I wanted to take a look at that, but while I'm doing so, so Andreas wrote back and thanked us for tackling the deck on this show, but also said that he used to call it Shady Pings. So if you'd like that name better, feel free to adopt Shady Pings. That's what the deck originally had as a name. But I also received a write-in from Caiaphas Kane, and that is one of the individuals that had requested Stampede of the Void Bellow. And they advised that the testing was quite a blast. So used the deck to handedly beat Sepulchral Guard, worked super well, and talked about how the combination of Refashion Reactions and Draknar with the +1 glory upgrade meant they were able to rack up quite a bit of glory by killing weaker fighters. So, and that was Sepulchral Guard with Rime-Locked Relics, which is a I don't want this to become the thing. I call it a serious deck. But Rime-Locked Relics plus Sepulchral Guard has seen quite a bit of success. Like, that is a pretty great pairing for them. So it's cool to see success against something that has, won tournaments. And I will say, on that note, that this deck really surprised me. I definitely did not give the GOATs enough credit. So let's dive a little further into that. So I was able to play 3 games with this deck. Only 3, but I won 2 out of the 3. Let's see, what did I play against? I played against Velmorn with Rime-Locked Relics, and took that one only by 3 points. So that one was, I believe, 18-15 when it was said and done. I played against, I had this written down, but for some reason, actually, lost the data, like the notes, I don't know, corrupted or disappeared on me. But so I played 2 games last league, and one of them I was hoping to be able to tell you, top of show, who they were against, but one of them was a win, one of them was a loss. And I want to say the win was against, no, I'm sorry. But what I can tell you is how it felt to play the deck, and what lessons I learned. So normally in the field report, you can definitely expect to hear exactly the tales of battle. At least which pairings I went up against. I like to give you that frame of reference. But I didn't check my notes again until today, and I was really surprised to see them missing, and I just can't for the life of me recall. So moving on from there. What went well and what didn't. So, I know. Sorry, it was against Miari's Purifiers. Correct. Okay, it was Miari's Purifiers with Rime-Locked Relic. So all 3 games were played against Rime-Locked Relic. And in the first game with Miari's Purifiers, it went very well. And second game, I lost tremendously. There we go. So why the difference there? Literally had probably the best potential game I could have against Purifiers, and then the worst game I probably could have with this deck in general. I think I scored 2 points. It was gross. And then so I had a blowout where I blew out my opponent. I was blown out by my opponent, and then I had a pretty close game with these guys, but managed the W just briefly. So where they worked really well. Now against something like the Purifiers, we're dealing with fighters that have 3 health, and I had a couple different ways to get to 3 damage. And so if I was able to land those particular attacks, then that was setting the pace for the game. So if I had, for example, Grashrak hitting, or Draknar hitting at the beginning of the game on 2 hammers, 3 damage, now with a reroll as well, right? So anytime you're doing that round 1 attack with Draknar, you're probably saving your ritual counter for this moment. That's the right moment, is to be able to go in with 2 dice hammers, knowing that you can reroll one of them, and you're going to have your best chance at taking down a target. And if they're on 1 defense dice and 3 health, that's even better, right? And so I was able to like kind of decimate, you know, the elves in the Miari's Purifier match in the first game because those key attacks were going through. And then Draknar was surviving and able to continue on through the game. So after the first game, we kind of talked about it too. A lot of the strength in this warband is in these 3 fighters. And so, and especially so in Draknar and Felhoof. Like in kill order, if you're up against this warband, you want to kill Draknar, then you want to kill Felhoof, then you want to kill Murgoth, and then the rest are Dangle Bros. And so, you know, a strategy as somebody opposing this warband could be, you know, to start in on the Dangle Bros to get yourself seed glory and whatnot. But that might not be the right call for a few reasons. And that's what we're going to kind of talk about as we go over this field report. Is although I was impressed with them, I think that they're probably too easily countered, even with this build, if you study this build or if you can figure it out in a best of 3. Now, the advantage that you have when you're playing this warband is most people do not know this warband and are not going to be able to see what is coming. But every kill you get, as long as Felhoof is alive, is going to grant you another ritual counter. And so it's going to grant you another reroll down the line. And you can use that reroll to beget another reroll if that is going to be an attack that would kill. Now, I mentioned earlier I could get up to 3 damage a couple different ways. Well, one is Draknar. Just keep Draknar alive and keep threatening him, right? And as Caiaphas Cain mentioned in his write-in, we had, or he had a lot of fun putting extra down the line with phrasing. Hold on. Rebooting. I can handle this, I promise. Oh, it was an early morning. I've been running around quite a bit for work already today. And actually drove back so that I could do the show. Wink. I'm dedicated to keeping this show going. I really love it. This is a really fun way to spend my Tuesdays. So Trophy Taker is going to get you, you know, extra glory every time Draknar gets a kill. So as soon, takes an adjacent enemy fighter out of action. That's important because if you were to pair them with something like Hungering Parasite, you got to pay attention to the fact that you can't give him Wicked Aim and expect him to still score you Trophy Hunter. And I think Jabbing Spear is not available to him. So for the most part, like that's always going to be true. And in this deck, you have so many tricks to move him around and get him to your targets. You know, he can be the one that receives refashioned reactions. That moves him adjacent to somebody else. You can use force movement on him if you select him for Void Curse. What's an interesting choice with this warband is he might not be your first target for Void Cursing. It really kind of depends on your opening draw because you probably want to boost somebody else's defense or maybe boost their sticking power to an objective, whereas he's already on 1 shield. And so I think the only reason you're giving it to him is if A, he has a good landing spot on an objective and you want him to stay there, or B, because you have enough of these Void Curse tricks in hand that you want to particularly use on him. Otherwise, it's not him that's getting your first Void Curse. It's probably Felhoof or Morgoth here. But I think that this warband's performance in a game is going to live or die on how much mileage you get out of these 3 fighters, Draknar specifically. So sometimes you might want to hold off on leading with Draknar. I think opening the game with Draknar against a 3 health target, a good key 3 health target, or even 4 health target if you have something like Unbearable Energies in your hand, is a like total play route and is totally worth the risk, especially with the reroll you're going to get. But in that second game against Miari's Purifiers, that attack missed, even with the reroll, right? And it set the tone because I was not able to get Seed Glory going. I wasn't able to get kills down, get my Warband inspired. So, you know, although I was impressed with them, I wouldn't say that, you know, they're the best warband in the world because they do have to overcome these 3 dangle bros, as well as like the fact that it doesn't get much better than this until you inspire, and then you're just looking at better accuracy, and that accuracy does slap. So to circle back to the extra source of damage for getting up to 3, it's Blood Crazed. Blood Crazed was really cool. So the last thing I want to cover in the field report, the 2 last things, is how important a lethal is to your playstyle, and then I want to go over some of the cards that worked and didn't work, and what I'd swap out like I would normally do on a field report. So Blood Crazed, if you have a central lethal, that's probably a pretty good thing to keep in mind, is that you can run somebody through a lethal and then bump up your damage. What's really interesting is it does not have to be the one doing the attack. Just you have to make sure that the one doing your attack is adjacent to the one that's damaged. So the one that is doing the attack has to have Blood Crazed, sure, but if this fighter has 1 or more wound tokens, so it could be them, and or is adjacent to a fighter that has 1 or more wound tokens. I think when I did this on the show originally, I immediately just assumed this was, the target fighter or an enemy fighter. But it can actually be any fighter that you have that's wounded, could be next to you and buffing you and allowing you that extra damage. So that's another way that you could use like refashion priorities or refashion reactions to help you out. And I thought that was really interesting. So I've never played a warband like this, where I want to get a couple of kills with this deck, best I can, right? And then I want to dwindle my fighters down. Like a sacrificial fighter at the beginning of the game is not a bad play for you. You do have to be careful managing like Seed Glory. Like, is it a good idea to be giving away Seed Glory? Are you going to be able to like work through that? But by the end of the game, you want a good number of your fighters to be dead for 2 reasons. And this is what was so fascinating to me, was like another reason you want a lethal towards the middle of the board is so that you can run fighters through it throughout the course of the game. Because you're going to want uncounted costs eventually. That's going to require Void Curse fighters to die. You might have to be the one killing your own Void Curse fighters to help make this happen. And survive. And so like, you also have to keep in mind that the first fighter that you Void Curse, you're going, like, it's okay if they die during round 1 and you don't get another Void Curse fighter during like the round, because round 2 will automatically grant you another Void Curse fighter. Now, by the time you get to round 3, you probably aren't relying too much on the game granting you another Void Curse fighter, but it's still an option available to you. Hold on one second. But it was really interesting how much I wanted to see my own fighters die, how much I cheered for my own fighters to die. Because survival of the fittest, there are 1 or more surviving friendly fighters and 5 or more fighters are out of action. That's a combination between you and the enemy team. And so obviously the kills you're getting is helping this equation as well. But more likely than not, you're going to be keeping a close eye on how your fighters are doing towards the scenario. And what makes it all worthwhile is the fact that there's a 4 glory payout waiting for you. So it's pretty scary thinking like, I have to kill my fighters for my own fighters, see them dead, for 2 glory and 2 glory. Like, if I have to kill, 2-3 fighters, how much am I really gaining here? Because they're also, my opponent is also gaining glory with each of these kills, so I'm not really netting much of an advantage. But if you're getting the equation closer and closer to Reshaped Realm, then you're also going to be able to score this bomb, for 4 points at the end of the game. And I was able to score it in both of the games I won. Well, that's not true. I believe I would have scored it in the first game, but we called it because like I had tabled my opponent, or at least had them. I think I had them down to 1 fighter, and then I either just tabled them and then we called it, or we called it right before it became evident that there was nothing more for that fighter to be able to do. But Reshaped Realm was secured in that game. And in the one I won, 18-15, they were doing pretty well getting to those 15 points on their side. And Reshaped Realm is what, tipped the scale at the end of the game. So you're really playing towards this. in everything that you do. Now, I found that scoring was actually really reliable and really easy across the board. The one other balancing act to how many fighters you have alive is the spoilers, because at some point in time you want 3 of them to end up on objectives at the end of one of your turns, very likely. It's tenuous at best if it's at the end of one of their turns. But this is a card worth mulliganing for. However, mulligans are a little difficult to manage in this deck because you don't want to mulligan into a hand that is survival of the fittest, uncounted cost, and reshaped realm. That's your nightmare opener. So these are cards that you want to see towards the end of the game. So if you see 2 of them in your opening hand, mulligan that hand. If you see obviously all 3, that hand's gone. But like even if you see one of them and you don't get really good other cards, you get maybe a singular end phase singular point end phase and then a surge, you probably want to mulligan that hand and try to get to the spoilers if you can. Because round 1, round 2 is when you're scoring this. You're likely not scoring this round 3. And if you can do it in 1, I mean, that's huge. That's great seed glory for you. It's out of the way. And all of a sudden your game plan is focused on tag row, right? And we talked about how tag row is making sure that the only ones alive are the ones that have been tagged with Void Curse. So to that end, what I want to end on is cards that I would recommend swapping out. And I'm pleased to say that the only card that I found to be a total dud and worth swapping out is Skirmisher. And I'm disappointed that I'm recommending the removal of this card because it's a good one. I wanted it to be a good one. It is more cute than good. So reaction, play this after a friendly fighter's move action, not as part of a charge action. That fighter can make a range 3 plus attack action. I wanted to use this as part of barging at some point in time. Worst case scenario, I thought it might be cute to use this as part of a barge. And then if I have a staggered fighter, I have maybe a ritual counter as well. So maybe I have 2 rerolls against that fighter. And that is in theory fun. Cause that was something I thought I'd be using this for. I also thought I'd be using it a lot more for refashioned priorities and refashioned reactions. That was not the case. More often than not, I found that if I had a archer alive and ready when I had Skirmisher in hand, I did not have movement tricks in hand or did not have movement tricks that made sense to hand to one of the archers. And when you kind of combine the fact that you're also trying to Void Curse or kill as many of your fighters as possible, but especially Void Curse as many of your fighters as possible, then this became even worse, right? Because what if I need to Void Curse that archer, and now I don't have access to range 3 plus attacks with that archer. Or maybe they're my only archer alive, or maybe I've lost both already. There were so many reasons Skirmisher over 3 games was stuck in my hand and not doing anything for me that I strongly recommend removing it. And I recommend actually putting in Reshaping Burst just to increase scoring reliability for yourself. So yes, this card could do nothing, but this card could be phenomenal. This card could be a huge change to how the game is going to go down, because it could help with Surrendered Will. It's another card towards that. It could help with Lashed into Motion, which is easily the hardest surge in here. There's a hold 3, and Lashed into Motion is actually the hardest surge, because if you draw this at the beginning of the game and you haven't drawn any of your tricks for self void cursing, then this is or movement tricks, this is really hard to accomplish. But it gets easier if we add something like Reshaping Burst, and it goes off on even one fighter. Can make this 2 actions that you were already going to do, and all of a sudden 1 extra that you weren't going to do. And if it goes harder, and Void Curses even more of your friendly fighters, then all of a sudden Lashed into Motion can become totally meaningless. Or if you draw Burst and Force movements together, things like that. And Stampede and Raiders, I was really impressed with. I liked both of these cards. I thought they were really good. The fact that it's immediately after your activation for Raiders is what makes this good. And Stampede is just, 3 charges. So that's pretty good too. You're probably doing that, and you've got Bowman to help you do it. It doesn't actually require you to land anywhere specific. So I think the only challenges I ran into Stampede with was occasionally I had chosen to use somebody for priorities or reactions because I needed them for support on an attack, but then it took them away from my ability to use them towards Stampede, and I would have rather used them for Stampede than the fighters that I had to choose. But in the moment, getting the support, securing an attack, maybe a kill, was highly beneficial. So yeah, Skirmisher out, Reshaping Burst in. I think the other cards that I had to kind of like come to grips with were Unnatural Resilience and Heedless of Pain, but I still would recommend bringing these cards. I think they're still good. What I had to come with grips with was I had to start thinking about these fighters in the long term and not making them part of the dead equation, which means I needed to find other fighters to be Void Cursed and die that weren't them. I had to be okay with these fighters living. And so, I think a trap play for yourself is if you start the game with Draknar Void Cursed and then you give him Unnatural Resilience. That's great, in the sense that Draknar is going to be much harder to kill. However, if you don't have any other sources of Void Curse in that opening hand, then you're going to have a really hard time getting Void Curse fighters as the ones that are being taken down, or using them to fuller effect for different things. So just keep that in mind. Sometimes it's really good to plan on that round 2 extra Void Curse that the game can give you. And if you're using the Void Curse status on Draknar or Morgoth and you're keeping them alive, then it just becomes harder. All right, that's enough for the field report here. I think we spent 10 minutes on opening, 20 minutes on the field report here, and I normally like to try to keep that down to about 20 in total. But I'm really glad that this surprised me, and let's dive into today's build. So before I go, let's save the changes here. Well, no. So a project that I plan to do is actually go back through these. I'm going to save the first drafts just for posterity. I want to save the initial first drafts of the builds that we built on the show, so that I could, if desired, see what changed and kind of maybe even do a side-by-side image. But ultimately, I actually want to update each of the decks that we've built on the show with the field report recommendations, because it is important to the deck building process to get out there and field test and see what works. That's why we do the field report. And so for the builds to be kind of finalized and up on Battle Mallet before the field report segment, I realized feels a bit premature. I definitely still want the decks hosted quickly to Battle Mallet so they're easy for you to grab and play with and explore. But the results of the field report, the changes made, the updates to the deck, those should ultimately be what ends up on Battle Mallet as the list that people can discover. And then if they want, they can come, to the show and see how the deck was built. And they can be like, oh, my list is a little different. And they can see that the reason it's different is because of the field report. And I want to do a little bit more to indicate that as well, either in the description or in a pinned comment. But more to come on that. It is going to be a little bit of an undertaking with 20 episodes behind us. Thankfully, not all episodes are fresh builds, but it is something that I very much so want to do to elevate what the decks, I think. So here we go. Let's clear deck editor and get to it. Whew. All right. Nemesis. And we're going to do the Skittershank's Clawpack today, which is Nether Maze. Well, when we were talking about Stampede of the Void Bellow there, I feel like I'm having some flashbacks. Aggro Void Curse is so silly in its value game sometimes. It really is. It was so interesting thinking more about how many activations I had left and my opponent had left in the picture of how many fighters I wanted to go down on both sides. And so that's fascinating. And when I was saying, it's one of the things that, an studious opponent might be able to crack is they might realize there's an amount of your fighters that they want alive, at the end of the game, because it'll help cancel Reshaped Realm, if you're not able to get them all Void Cursed. If they are careful, they can manage how many Void Curse fighters are down, which is harder to do if your abilities are going well for you, like Thrall Maker, Reshape Snare, Reshape Burst. It's harder for them to manage that one, but they could try to counter Uncounted Cost. And then they could also try to counter Survival of the Fittest, in that second or third game against you. They're probably not going to know about it in the first game. I think that's going to be, a dark horse score for you. But they might not know it's there. And then once they do, oh, they need 5 dead. Okay, well, there's only 4 dead between us right now. I'm going to go ahead and not, attack another fighter. I think I can outscore you, and I don't want to accidentally give you that 2 glory banger. All hail the Vermintide. Absolutely. Thanks for joining, Lilligard. So, we need to take a look at our filters here. And it's going to be Hungering Parasite. And Nether Maze. Boop. All right, so let's do a breakdown of these fighters real fast. Oh, right, we need to get one card in order to view them. So, the Clawpack. One of the reasons why I'm excited about this warband is look at how fast they are. So fast. And we've got these 3 fighters on 2 dodge at the beginning of the game. So that can be a really spicy defense profile. That can be really hard to hit. And they have a really straightforward but interesting game plan. Their goal is to hit and kill your leader eventually. That is bluntly straightforward their goal. But they have so many interesting tricks to help them do that. They can prevent you from attacking certain fighters. They can take an attack on the chin and send it off to one of these minions instead, and kill one of those minions. They can score a little bit for their own forces dying, and they can even pull a leader that's trying to hide, with a push of 2 towards one of them or your territory, something like that. We'll explore that card together. So they've got some really neat tricks to help them get into your territory and survive long enough to complete their quest. So this is definitely invasion aggro. And what they're going to be doing to inspire here, we have 1 or more enemy leaders are out of action, or an enemy leader has 4 or more wound counters. And I think that's the truth for... Yeah, there's some commonalities between these. So they don't all inspire the same way. Holistically, they all have the 1 or more leaders are out of action. If that's true, boom, the warband is inspired. But these 2 here that start as assassins, they're looking for 4 or more wound counters on that leader. So that gives them some bonus if they're up against somebody like Mollog, a big boy warband, somebody like Rothgorn. They have to chew through much more of them. They're going to reward them at that 4 wound point. Then the others... so Creepkin Whisper here, 1 or more enemy leaders are out of action, and or this fighter makes an attack action that targets an enemy leader. And that is true for all 3 of these. So they just need to make an attack. Doesn't even need to be successful. So they need to try to get a piece of that leader. And is there any adjacency requirements there? Or this fighter makes an attack? No. So 2 of them can do that at range 3. And then what are they getting? Kin Whisper here is becoming an assassin. That'll matter. This is a warband where their keywords will definitely matter. And then over here, our minion, so goes from, an apprentice to an actual assassin. Over here, Skulk is getting that 2 dodge profile, which is really going to be handy. And then Crouched, he's going to get the same 2 dodge bounty, and their attack profiles get better. But seeing that 2 dodge is huge. So, what other things are there to talk about with these individuals? A lot of them, especially the first 3, I think just the first 3, have their own abilities as well. So like Slink, he's going to house Marked for Death, which is something that each assassin's going to have. So Kin Whisper doesn't start with it because he's not an assassin out the gates. You can reroll 1 attack dice in the attack rolls for this fighter's attack actions that target an enemy leader. So when you're doing the thing that you want to do, killing a leader, you're going to get a reroll offensively against them. Anytime you're using an assassin crouched, definitely. All right, and then so Snipe over here is going to get smoke bombs. Use this after this fighter's activation. If you do, stagger each enemy fighter adjacent to this fighter. And then Creep is going to get after this attack action. So this is Barbs. If it succeeded, give the target 1 net counter. And actually, this has been updated a little bit. So let's see that right here. So reaction after this fighter. After this attack action, if it succeeded, give the target 1 net counter. So that's the same, but they've essentially just split it into 2 parts. So this is the part that you kind of care about when he's alive, and then this part will continue whether he's alive or not. Add the following ability: Rip Free. After an enemy fighter with 1 or more net counters makes a move action, deal 1 damage to that fighter and remove that fighter's net counters. At the end of the round, clear all net counters. This ability must be used even if this fighter is out of action. So this is the big deal. I always believed that that's how this worked, but there was some confusion generated by this ability and a few others in the game that were similar, where it kind of put something into motion. And my belief was that once it was put into motion, it would, it was uncounterable. You couldn't kill the target to then stop it from being in motion. It's already been sent into the game and triggered. But to kind of just clear up that confusion, at least is how I get a read off of this. They came out and separated the 2 abilities and said, no, this is how this is supposed to work. So there we go. Outside of that, we just have some crazy accurate profiles. They are quite accurate. So especially when you consider the context that we're going to be juggling a Parasite in here, and a Parasite's going to allow rerolls anytime our Parasite host is adjacent to their target, or if we're able to get that Parasite onto the target or onto somebody next to the target. So for those not familiar with Hungry and Parasite, we'll go over that just briefly here, and then we'll dive in. I think that was a good quick overview of the warband there. So we need some sort of Hungry and Parasite card just to, hold on, let me just hit 2 here. There we go. But that'll give us access to our plot card to review real quick. So you do get a little guy. Here, I'm going to show you what the little guy looks like for those unfamiliar. So themortalrealms.com has a blog, Underworld, and under that blog is Underworld releases. So if you go there, you can see all of the warbands and universal rival decks that have come out since, I believe, Hexbane. I think Hexbane's the first one that we did on the site, and Hungry and Parasite's here as well. So this is the cute little guy. This is the Parasite himself. So 1 part's a plot card, and then this is an upgrade that's unnumbered that is also included in the game. And so we'll actually read it here. So when using cards from the Hungry and Parasite Rivals deck, show this card to your opponent in the Reveal Your Warband step and use these rules in the game. That's always the case with plot cards. After deploying your Warband, give 1 friendly fighter your Bane of Heroes upgrade. Do not spend any glory points when you give the Bane of Heroes upgrade to a fighter. When a fighter that has 1 or more Bane of Heroes upgrades is taken out of action, break those upgrades. So what this is saying, at the beginning of the game, before you've even seen the roll-off, as soon as you're done putting your fighters on the board, you're giving this upgrade to one of those fighters. Okay. And then if that fighter is ever taken out of action by any means, then you're immediately going to break this upgrade. It's going to go into the discard pile. But in an Inspire step, if your Bane of Heroes upgrade is in your discard pile, give that upgrade to a friendly fighter or an enemy fighter that is adjacent to one or more friendly fighters. So this means that every time we're in an Inspire step, we're going to check, where is our Bane of Heroes? If it's on one of our fighters, end of check. If it's in our discard pile, we need to give it to somebody. We need to give it to one of our fighters or an enemy fighter, maybe, if we have an adjacency with that enemy fighter that we want to give this to. So that's how the Parasite is transferred. So it's always in the game. As long as you have a fighter alive, always in the game. And then what does it do? So can only be used as described on its plot card and cannot be included in or added to any decks. Again, unnumbered. Fighters are staggered while within 1 hex of this fighter. This fighter is uninspired and cannot be inspired, so that's going to be something that we have to manage. That's okay, early game, but then that starts going against the inspirations that we have. We're fairly accurate. I don't think we gain any extra damage. We'll take a look at that. So we're kind of trading accuracy for accuracy as long as we're putting this on our assassins. If we're putting this on like our minions, then we're also hitting their defensive profile. We're staggered as well, right? So we're managing the fact that they're going to get a reroll against us. So this might be a warband that lives fast and dies hard. So at the end of the action phase, this fighter's player chooses a fighter within 1 hex of this fighter, deal 1 damage to the chosen fighter. So this is an ability that must resolve if it is possible to resolve. So generally, you're going to try to get an adjacency with an enemy fighter, deal damage to them. Could be an adjacency with one of your own fighters if you really don't want the host to take the damage, deal damage to one of your own fighters. The host is isolated or unable to pass that damage off to somebody adjacent to them. Let's say they have a shield that's going to prevent 1 damage, some sort of upgrade, some ability that's doing that for them. Then you have to choose yourself for the damage, and you're going to take it. So if you're isolated or unable to pass the damage off to another player, you'll take it. So be wary of that. All right. So we're good and covered. And what are we going to take for objectives? So let's go ahead and just take these out, since these aren't necessarily objectives that I'm going to want to bring along. Unsure. They could be. And let's start with our surges. Before I do that, how many... All right. I wanted to take a look. How many fighters get extra damage? So both Padpaw and Kin Whisper get extra damage in the form of Grievous. So that's something we're going to want to keep in mind. And these 2 fighters do not get extra damage. So they're pretty... these are pretty reasonable, like, maybe early game patsies for the... maybe patsy's not the right word. Individuals to just kind of have the Parasite on and hide with. Like, if we're not ready to embrace the Parasite yet with any of these fighters, then maybe these fighters are good candidates for it. They're going to die at some point anyways. But Skittershank, I'm pretty comfortable with it being on Skittershank at some point in time. The only thing we're losing out on is an extra dice, and obviously we're taking on that stagger negative. I think he's a pretty good option. These 2, we're losing Grievous, but that's about it. Kin Whisper is no longer an assassin, and sometimes keywords matter. Okay, so let's keep that in mind. That's really important as we're working through how we're going to be managing the Parasite. So, Daggers in the Dark. Score this immediately after a staggered enemy fighter is taken out of action. Well, we're definitely including this card because, as the plot card for Hungering Parasite says, the fighters that are adjacent to us are indeed staggered. So this is a kill surge that says that has different routes for us to get to it, right? We have things like the smoke bomb that can enable this. We have, I believe, not at the gate, but Skulk that inspires into stagger. So that's another route for us to have a staggered fighter. But I think more importantly, the Parasite's going to be meeting this requirement anytime we're attacking a fighter that has it or is adjacent to it. So Daggers in the Dark is in. Killing Supreme. Score this immediately after a friendly fighter's successful attack action with Grievous if the attack roll contained one or more critical successes. Now this one's a bit harder. I think we're going to leave this one at home right out of the gate because we could be in a scenario where we're not able to use Grievous. Immediately after a successful attack contained one or more critical successes. So essentially Grievous went off. Our leader does have Grievous at the beginning of the game. It's tempting. We'll put it in for now. We'll think about it. We'll probably cut this card. But Wave the Hidden Padpaw. Surge Duel. Score this immediately if an enemy fighter is taken out of action by a friendly fighter's attack action and your leader supported that attack action. So enemy fighter is taken out. We've killed them. Any enemy fighter, doesn't have to be an enemy leader, as long as our leader supported that attack action. High risk, high reward. It's asking for our leader to be in a very specific spot, but it could get us to glory. I'm tempted, that's for sure. We're going to consider that. We could always play around this and bring the push that happens after somebody moves. We'll take a look at, I forget what that card is called off the top of my head, but it's a gambit. If we have enough movement tricks, we might be able to justify bringing Way of the Hidden Paw, especially since it's any enemy fighter that we're taking out. It is high risk, high reward. So I'm not gonna sugarcoat that, especially with the with the Hungering Parasite being something that we're managing. There might be times where we're just losing fighters so quickly. If we draw this in like the third round, we don't have enough fighters to make this happen. So we'll consider. I knew when I was coming to this that there'd be a lot of kill surges. So I just don't know how many we need to take on board. Way of the Lashing Tail. Score this immediately after an activation step if 3 or more friendly fighters are adjacent to the same enemy fighter. Again, I need to see how many movement tricks we have. Pretty much any time on the show, unless I'm like strong hard no right out of the gate on a 2 glory surge, we're gonna entertain it. So this will depend on what we see in gambits and upgrades, and mostly gambits. All right, so that's actually, oh wow, okay, so that's it. That's all the offerings we have here. So that's 2 kill surges. We have 1 successful attack with a crit, and this surround surge. So that's all that they're bringing to the table, which means their other 8 cards must be end phase cards. So now for surge package, we're into Hungering Parasite already. So Deadly Influence. If you're unfamiliar with Hungering Parasite, let me fill you in. You're bringing this in every build. Deadly Influence is extremely easy to get. You just need to run over a staggered, a snare hex, which will stagger, or run through a lethal. And specifically, you're running through this with your Parasite fighter. More often than not, it's going to be a snare hex that you brought on the board that you're playing, because your fighter that has the Parasite is already staggered. So taking on the act of being staggered and receiving a staggered token isn't really changing anything for you. All right, so Driven by the Curse, make a successful attack with the Bane of Heroes fighter. That's what the surge says. And this fighter can be your fighter, their fighter, as long as they have your Warband's Bane of Heroes upgrade. So if you ever pass this over to them and they make a successful attack, then they've scored this for you. And remember, it's only a successful attack, because I have definitely forgotten that and needed to force myself to think I needed a kill to score this. But it's even easier than that. So Seek the Cure. Score this immediately after an activation step if the fighter that has your Warband's Bane of Heroes upgrade is holding an objective and that fighter has 2 or more move tokens. So this could be your opponent. Very unlikely. I can't imagine all of those stars align. You've handed your Bane of Heroes over to them. They have a fighter with 2 or more move upgrades, and that fighter is on an objective. It's probably too many stars to align, but if you ever do see somebody with multiple move tokens, maybe you're against Zarbag's Gits, and they're on an objective, you could always hand the Bane over to them. Like, keep that in mind. But most of the time, it's going to be you scoring this with your own fighter that you've moved twice, which means we're going to need... No, we're going to leave this at home because it's move tokens exclusively. I was going to say we need some movement tricks, and we still need to get to gambits to really get a good picture of that. But with this warband, I think there's going to be a lot of charging happening, and charging doesn't count towards the move tokens that we're going to need for this. So this is just staying home. Temporary reprieve. Score this immediately after an activation step in which your warband's Bane of Heroes upgrade was broken. So I find this to be the worst version of Thwarted Destiny. So we're probably going to take Thwarted Destiny and leave Temporary Reprieve at home. Why do I say that? Because Temporary Reprieve is only scoreable in two ways. One, the fighter that has your Bane of Heroes dies during an activation. So you can't even react to the activation with like a second attack because it's no longer in which. So score this immediately after an activation step in which, right? Once you react to the final action that was taken during a activation, you are no longer in that activation. You're immediately after that activation. So therefore, temporary reprieve can only be scored if a fighter with your Bane of Heroes dies during that activation, or you play. There's a gambit. I'll call the gambit out when we get to it. But there's a gambit where you can react when somebody gets adjacent to your Bane of Heroes fighter, and you react by then breaking it off. Now you can be the one to do that. However, like you can move your own fighter next to that person. I think more often when that card is used, you're not using it that way. What you're doing is you're reacting to an enemy getting adjacent to your Parasite fighter. I always want to call him cursed. But your host. They're getting adjacent to your host, and you don't want them to have a reroll during the attack that they're about to perform against you. So you'll play that card and break it off. That'll score you temporary reprieve. But Thwarted Destiny has a lot more flexibility because it scores this immediately after an Inspire step. If you gave your warband's Bane of Heroes upgrade to an inspired fighter in that step, so we have like a hybrid condition here. We have something else that could accomplish this, or the temporary reprieve part. The fighter that has your warband's Bane of Heroes upgrade was taken out of action in this turn. So over the course of an activation and a power step and all the parts in between, did your fighter die, the fighter that has your Bane of Heroes upgrade? And then we check it in the Inspire step as we're going to give the Parasite back out. So if that's true, you're having to give it back out because a fighter died, then Thwarted Destiny is scoring for you. But it goes further to have that hybrid and allow you to score it off of taking an inspired fighter of yours down a peg. Now, our whole warband inspires when we meet the leader is dead condition, and therefore we're going to have a lot of people that could help us with Thwarted Destiny at that point in time. And we have some fairly easy inspires when we can range 3 just attack the leader to just get inspired real quick, and then maybe pass the Parasite over to that fighter and score us Thwarted Destiny. So I think this is going to be really good in this deck. And let's see, how many do we have? So we have 7. Okay, whew. So I've got a little bit of cutting room, but let's take a look at the Clutches of Evil. Score this immediately after an activation step if an enemy fighter has your warband's Bane of Heroes upgrade. I don't know how much we're going to be passing it around, but until I know that answer, we can take on the Clutches of Evil. If we're not going to be passing it around much, we're definitely cutting this. I have not relied on Clutches of Evil in the Crimson Court build that I've been playing, so I'm not sure. Like, it didn't seem like a good fit in the Plague Pack deck, or I think like often if you're essentially taking on a lot of the benefits of that, like the power deck can offer you and the scoring can offer you when you are the host, it can be hard to justify passing it over and risking potentially not getting it back. So Clutches of Evil can be kind of an interesting scoring point. Okay, so over to, let's check third end phase, see if there's any of those. There are not. So let's go on to end phase. We're going to have like 8 plus 6, so we're going to have 14. Yeah, 14. So quite a bit to choose from here. So let's sort by glory total. Collateral damage. What is this 3-pointer? Duel. Score this in an end phase if one or more enemy leaders are out of action and there are 4 or more fighters out of action. So if the second part of this duel here does not care which side these fighters have died from. In fact, your leader can be dead as long as amongst the dead is their leader. I like this a lot. Now, most warbands, I'm not a fan of this. But in this case, when we have so many tools around getting to and killing their leader and so much incentive to do so, I think it's totally fine. And it's a really fun card. Like this is probably going to happen naturally, just the amount of bodies dropping. And very likely your opponent's going to need to kill your fighters for various reasons. You're an immense threat with like how much accuracy and damage you can put down over time. And like they're going to need it for their own objectives to a degree. Maybe not every warband, but it can be seed glory, and at the very least, like it can be preventing you from continuing to take more of them down and stop what they're trying to do. So like this feels inevitable as long as you can kill their leader. It's just kind of got a delay on it, right? Like if you think about the fact that maybe this card, we don't really want to see it in round 1 unless it was like super bloody from a balance standpoint. I feel like that's kind of why we have the rest of the caveats here. But overall, I think that's going to be a really fun goal card. Dazed and Confused. Score this in an end phase if there are more enemy fighters that have 1 or more stagger tokens than there are surviving enemy fighters that have no stagger tokens. So more than half the enemy fighters are staggered. There are more enemy fighters that have 1 or more stagger tokens. Okay. Yeah, let's try this out. So I do not know yet if it will make it into final build. Looks like we've got a lot of attractive options, but at least in theory, this is a warband that could take advantage of the barge action towards this end. If your opponent knows it's there and they want to counter it, a lot of the times the only way they're going to be able to counter that is to take activations to go on guard. And I'm not sure if that's the best use of their activations. So at the very least, maybe you're getting some suboptimal activations out of them as they're trying to counter this. But you do have some pretty fun ways to try to make this happen. You have the smoke bomb inherently here. Yeah, so stagger each enemy fighter adjacent to this fighter. So you're kind of looking for fighters that you can reach in, you know, one go, pocket of fighters you can sneak yourself into, almost as if you were playing towards the idea of scything. And then Skulk can also help offer some to that picture. And then you have the barge super action available to you as well. I mean, you have stun, but probably more often than not, that's going to be a barge and not a stun if you're using it towards Dazed and Confused. It's interesting that it's only looking at enemy fighters. You don't have to worry about the stagger status of any of your own fighters, which again, barge then is good for, because it's not, you know, stun and you're stationarily next to this target and getting a stagger counter down on them. Is you can actually move, take on a stagger counter yourself and stagger them. All right, let's see. So in chat, we've had a little bit more added to the conversation, so I want to highlight that. Wellner, having been on the receiving end of this pairing a lot, Killer Supreme tends to be, did my leader crit? Killer Supreme. Okay, yeah, that's kind of the feeling I was getting. That makes sense. I have a feeling it's going to sneak its way into the final build here and not make it out of the, and not be cut once we hit the trim. And Spinnerite is in with, I play Rippa's Parasite with a lean towards handing off the Bane to high priority enemy targets and sticking with a lot of objectives that don't mind who has it. I think that's really cool. I think that there's a Soul Raid build there as well, I haven't done it yet, but I have like theorized about it. Soul Raid is one of my forever favorites, so they're always in the back of my mind on what weird things I can do with them. They have a problem though where they have, it's like 2 really good surges, a couple okay surges, so their surge pool isn't the problem, but they only have like 1 good end phase, arguably maybe a second, and then the rest are really bad. So you need to take on most of the pairing that you're adding with it. And so when you're taking on most of Parasite, it might not be a good fit for them if you're trying to play a handoff strategy. You probably have to instead embrace having it and handing it off only when like absolutely necessary. So that's interesting. Did I try it? I think I tried it once. It might have been the first. It might actually have been my first experience with Hungry and Parasite. Because I remember a game against Alex where I learned do not hand off the Parasite unless you have a plan to get it back, or you do not need it back, because he was painting Kagras and just ran away to go work on desecrating and ran away with my Parasite. I was like, problem. All of my power hand right now needs that. Come back. After I had missed my kill against him or what have you. So be careful when you hand over the Parasite. I think that Ripa's build that Spinnerite has going sounds really cool though. All right, so impressive students. Score this in an end phase if friendly minions made 2 or more successful attack actions in this round. Ooh, minions. So I don't think our apprentice starts as a minion. No, he doesn't. So we're talking just crouched and skulk, and I think that's gonna be pretty risky. They only have 2 health. They start on 1 dodge before we like complete our assassination mission or find other ways to get them pretty close to the target. I don't know. That seems risky. So if we're down to 1 minion, they have to live long enough for us to get 2 attacks down with them. If we have 2 minions, we could take 2 charge cracks at this. Okay. I'm gonna leave this one out for now. I know it's there. We can always circle back to it if need be. But my gut is that this isn't making it in out the rip. So Bane's Triumph. Okay, so we're on to the Hungry and Parasite cards that offer 2 glory. Score this in an end phase if a friendly fighter with your warband's Bane of Heroes upgrade is in enemy territory and there are no other friendly fighters in that territory. I don't think this fits here. The reason is we're probably going full invade for the most part. Like I think the only thing that isn't invade about this strategy is potentially like any holding back of the Parasite that we want to do, or any managing their like a counter invasion, right? If like they're also playing invading aggro or invading hold, and we need to manage that a little bit. Outside of that, in most other scenarios, we want the ability to go hang out in force in their territory. And so that's going to immediately be counterintuitive to Bane's Triumph. Cursed Tyrant. I like this card quite a bit. It's score this in an end phase if a friendly fighter has 4 or more upgrades and 1 or more of those upgrades is a Bane of Heroes upgrade. So another way to think about this is the friendly fighter that has your Bane of Heroes upgrade right now, do they have 3 more upgrades, right? Because it's already counting the Bane towards the 4. So I like that quite a bit. Get 3 Seed Glory, and then use that to put upgrades on 1 fighter. Now, you want to wait until the end phase if you can, which is an interesting push or pull in this card, because those upgrades might be more useful to you in the moment, and you can take that risk. But the more of those you can hold off on until the end phase, right before the end phase, then the better chances you have to secure this for yourself. Especially if like your Parasite fighter dies and you have to move that. And well, now if you'd invested, then you Cursed Tyrant might not be in reach anymore. But if you'd held on to those, you might be good to go. Okay, Powerful Pawn. An enemy leader has your Warband's Bane of Heroes upgrade, or a friendly leader in enemy territory has your Bane of Heroes upgrade. This is probably not the play. We're going to slot it in. We're going to think about it a little more. Initially, not feeling great about this one. In fact, you know what? Hold on. Let's let's put this back in. I feel better about impressive students than I do powerful pawn, because this requires one of the 2 leaders in the game to be alive, and something tells me that that's not going to be true very long, right? Like, you don't want theirs to be alive. That's your game plan, and so that's removing part of the hybrid here. And then how long can you keep your own fighter alive, especially if they're taking on the parasite? We'll consider it, but probably going. Their problem now, there are more surviving friendly fighters than surviving enemy fighters. We're going hyper aggro here. Maybe we can manage that. And an enemy fighter has your Warband's Bane of Heroes upgrade, so we had to hand it off. Now, if we're up against Resurrection, this becomes harder. Most Resurrection Warbands run raising fighters out of their leader. It's usually an ability tied to their leader being alive or their leader directly, and therefore our assassination mission kind of will turn off. It'll turn off resurrection for them, but not in round 1, right? Like, that's a very lucky game if we can. This is a late game score, is what I'm trying to arrive at, right? Like, it could take all of round 1 to complete our assassination mission, maybe even longer. And therefore, if we're up against somebody with a lot of enemy fighters, it's going to take time to get. There are more surviving friendly fighters than surviving enemy fighters. So there's 5 of us. I'm gonna guess by the end of round 1, there's 3 of us. An optimistic round, maybe 4, but we're gonna say an average of 3 of us at the end of round 1. And so then going forward, we have to somehow dwindle that number down. And if it's a horde, then that's gonna be really hard to dwindle down. And if it is resurrection, and often those 2 are tied together, then it's going to be even harder until after we complete that assassination mission. So I'm pretty reluctant to take this card on. Yeah. Okay. So how are we doing? I think we have 5. Oh boy. Okay. So I'm really glad that collateral damage has the payout it does. We might really try to lean into scoring a 2-point surge, because we're probably going to take on 1 or 2 end phase cards that have only 1 glory. And maybe I come back after the field report and I say, like, you know what? I was wrong. You know, like, Bane's Triumph is totally something we can go for, or their problem now. But I don't know. Like, it's either not my play style, or everything I kind of outlined about why I'm avoiding these is more true. Does that make sense? Like, sometimes I'm speaking from my own experience, and my own experience doesn't include different play styles. And I try to experiment and play around with different play styles. So, like, the amount of hurting and killing my own fighters, you know, while playing the Void Bellow for this week, that was, you know, a play style I don't normally think about, and I don't normally wrap my head around. And so different playstyles can kind of shine a light on different ways to score and approach scoring. But I think here, my experience speaks well to Bane's Triumph and their problem now. Probably not coming out on top when you're running Skittershank's Clawpack. I don't think these are the picks for an invading aggro strat here. But we'll see. And that's all just to say that, like, anytime you can cram your end phase full of 2+, you know, glory rewards, like, that's a fantastic end phase. I mean, we're sitting glut on 21 right now. Let's see, let's say -3 in the surge category, and +1 in the end phase category. So we're sitting at like 19. Like, that is a really high floor. So it's okay. It's okay to take on some 1s. All right. In chat here, we have Jake jumping in. The idea of throwing the Bane at the enemy is entertaining, but man, it scares me every time I try to build that way. I know. I fully agree. Okay, so Let's take a look at these 1 glory payouts. We'll try to rip through these here. Armed to the Fangs. Score this in an end phase if 3 or more surviving friendly fighters each have 1 or more upgrades. Okay, so one thing immediately that comes to mind here is, that you're going to need to maintain 3 or more surviving fighters. So this could be really, you essentially want a 1 glory payout to be as true as possible, regardless of what round you draw it in. So round 3, this is probably not scoring. This is probably a terrible draw at that point in time. So we're going to see if we can pass on this and look at other options. Infiltrate their lair. Duel. Score this in an end phase if no friendly fighters are in your territory and 1 or more friendly fighters are in enemy territory. Ooh, so no friendly fighters are in ours and 1 or more friendly fighters are in enemy territory. Yeah. So this is something that I think is totally doable. Now in round 1 we have 5 fighters, so it's not as doable there without movement tricks. We'll take a look at what our movement tricks look like. If we have to counter our opponent at all, and their presence in our territory, that can pull away from this. But at least initially, I'm okay with this. I think this is totally fine. Hardest in round 1, but gets easier and easier as the game goes on. I think it's still manageable in round 1. Rattled. Score this in an end phase if 2 or more enemy fighters have stagger tokens. Okay, we were already kind of leaning into stagger tokens before. I don't know, like for a 2 glory payout, I definitely want to lean into stagger tokens. I don't know for 1 glory payout if I want to force that out of my action economy, especially since this has a hard number on it. So we need to keep 2 or more enemy fighters alive for that moment. Whereas, what is it, Dazed and Confused? There are more enemy fighters that have 1 or more stagger tokens than there are surviving enemy fighters that have no stagger tokens. So this can be 1 fighter on their team is left and they have a stagger token. And that is more than 0 surviving enemy fighters that have no stagger tokens. Right? Hold on. Let's go to an end phase if there are sometimes you got to read things twice to make sure that 0 works. Score this in end phase if there are more enemy fighters that have 1 or more stagger tokens. So let's say 2 out of 3 fighters. Then there are surviving enemy fighters that have no stagger tokens. So then 1 fighter alive doesn't have a stagger token. We're definitely scoring there. Yeah, this would also score if there was 1 staggered fighter and 0 fighters without stagger tokens. Yeah, so this will score with 1 of them left. When this doesn't score is if the number's flipped, right? So you have 1 fighter that you've managed to stagger, but they still have 2 fighters alive that don't have stagger tokens. Or there are 0 fighters with stagger tokens. Sorry, 0 fighters with stagger tokens and 1 fighter. I can't phrase that correctly. Why am I not phrasing it? There are 0 fighters with 1 or more stagger counters. And then there are 1. Wow. I can't wrap my tongue around that sentence there. It's like a tongue twister for me. But you get it. So 1 fighter alive on their team, staggered, good to go. If they have 0 other fighters. If that fighter is alive and not staggered, obviously you're not scoring this. Okay, moving on. I don't know why that was so hard to say. But Rattled says 2 or more, and that's a problem. Unsurprising Fate. Score this in an end phase if 1 or more friendly minions are out of action. Perfect. Excellent. I know that there's a way to pass damage on to our minions as well. We want this. Way of the Striking Fang. Score this in an end phase if 1 or more enemy leaders are out of action. So we can lean into our game plan a little more. Say, hey, have we been successful in our assassination? Then get paid. I don't know which one I like better, Infiltrate or Way of the Striking Fang. I think I'm leaning Way of the Striking Fang. Beyond Exhausted. You know what? Beyond Exhausted's even better. So score this in an end phase if the fighter that has your Warband's Bane of Heroes upgrade has 1 or more move and or charge tokens. So as long as the fighter that ends up with our Bane of Heroes upgrade by the time we score is rocking move and charge move or a charge token, this will score. So that's great. So we have Beyond Exhausted. and far and wide. So actually we ended up with a lot of really good options here, because far and wide is something that goes from 1 to 2 glory, depending on how, we'll read it. Score this in an end phase if the fighter that has your Warband's Bane of Heroes upgrade is holding an objective. So you could just be hanging out in your own territory safely on an objective and holding your Bane of Heroes. And then if that objective is an enemy territory, gain an additional point. So this is a cool option as well, because enemy territory is really where we're going to want to be. So if we have any tricks at any point in time to get that fighter that is rocking our host onto an objective, then we're actually flexing this up to 2 glory payout instead of 1. Okay, so that's really good. We've got some good cuts in here. It's fun that going into the end phase, 1 offerings here. I wasn't sure what scoring was ultimately going to look like, but now I'm really happy with our options overall. So before we start trimming though, we need to take a look at the rest of the picture. So what can we bring from a gambit standpoint? You'll notice there's 20 right here. So there's no spells. We don't have a wizard. So closing for the kill. Let's see. Pick one. Yes, I was rattled. Get out of here. Closing for the kill. Pick one. Choose one friendly fighter. Choose a friendly fighter. Push the chosen fighter up to 2 hexes closer to a staggered enemy fighter. Oh, interesting. Because fighters are staggered while within 1 hex of this fighter. Yeah. So a staggered enemy fighter could be somebody that is adjacent to our Hungering Parasite fighter. So, or choose 2 friendly fighters. Push each chosen fighter 1 hex. Yeah, everything about this is great. Especially with the little extra synergy that you're going to get from Hungering Parasite here. So this could move fighters into hold positions. This could move them into like adjacent positions. So I like that it's friendly fighters. It's not restricted to assassins or minions here. So we could even potentially get that group hug going that we're looking for potentially in our surge package. So like that. Misplaced Optimism. This is the card that always immediately comes to mind. I find the imagery haunting, and I love this card. Misplaced Optimism. Choose an enemy leader in enemy territory. Push the chosen leader up to 2 hexes. And it's not necessarily towards anyone, which I had definitely forgotten. So you get full control over the movement of those 2 pushes. That's really cool. I imagine this is in every one of their decks. Poison Traps. You can make the following reaction. So this is a domain. Reaction, use this after an enemy fighter's move action. Roll 1 attack dice. On a roll of hammer, stagger that enemy fighter. This effect persists until the end of the round or until another domain gambit is played. This is interesting. If we bring Poison Traps, I'm going to select it for now. If we bring this, the reason we're bringing it is towards that staggered end phase, mostly. Because if the Hungering Parasite is involved in the mix, then they're already staggered. They can't be double staggered. You're not going to get 2 rerolls because you have a source of stagger and they're staggered themselves. No, they're any amount of things coming together to say that this fighter is staggered only counts as 1 instance. Yeah, this kind of helps with the staggered tokens thing, but for the most part, our Parasite's already offering us that. So that's probably getting weeded out. Probing Attack. Push each friendly minion up to 1 hex. Each minion can be pushed up to 2 hexes instead if, after that push, that minion is adjacent to 1 or more enemy fighters. Push each friendly minion up to 1 hex. Each minion can be pushed up to 2 hexes instead if, after that push, that minion is adjacent to 1 or more enemy fighters. Okay. So as long as we have minions alive, which is a big caveat here, as long as we have minions alive, they can be pushed 1 or 2 each, depending on where they land. Yeah, I like this. So some of these pushes are also helping us offload the damage from the Hungering Parasite. at the end of the round. Like, we could be using this during the round to set things up, or we could say like, hey, at some point I'm gonna have to manage 1 damage that's coming off of my Parasite, and so you could create adjacencies at the end of the round that either could, well, it's bad to pass the Parasite off at the end of the round to an adjacent target, because then they'll just ping you because you're adjacent to them. But you know, if you give that Bane to one of those adjacencies and it's a friendly, then you're able to pass the damage off, which is really nice. Redirected attack. Play this card during an attack action that targets a friendly assassin. After the determined success step, if the attack action succeeds, choose 1 friendly minion that is within 2 hexes of that assassin. That minion is taken out of action, then the combat sequence ends. So this is another one of the cards that always comes into mind for me when I'm playing them. Man, Poison Traps is totally getting cut, I imagine. But the rest of these are going to be hard cuts because these are great cards already. But this is one that stands in mind to me as part of their identity. And so I'm curious if this is going to work in contrast to, or in counter to, probing attack, right? Like if I'm using redirected attack, am I also kind of saying, well, now I'm not going to be able to play probing attack when it comes out? And do I only bring 1 of these then? I'm not sure. That might be something I have to feel out through games played. Skittering Blur. In the next activation, attack actions cannot target friendly assassins. Another card I associate with their identity. This is one of the cards I'm looking the most forward to trying in this synergy, because what it's saying potentially with this pairing is if I have the Parasite on an assassin, you can't even attack the Parasite in the next activation. And that is really interesting. Now, mind you, with redirected attack and Skittering Blur, they're both referencing assassins. Again, we do have an apprentice that turns assassin in Creep Kin Whisper once he is inspired. So then he gets to be a part of these equations as well. Spitting Cobra technique. Choose 1 enemy fighter within 3 hexes of a friendly Creep Kin Whisper or friendly Slink Skittershank and roll 1 magic dice. On a roll of crit, deal 1 damage to the chosen fighter and then stagger the chosen fighter. Otherwise, stagger the chosen fighter. So, we're choosing a fighter within 3 and rolling a magic dice, potentially damaging them, but at the very least staggering them. And it's restricted to a couple of fighters. I think I like this a lot. I think I like this more than Poison Traps. Poison Traps can be a bit of a meta call as well, because it's a domain. Like if you think you're going into a Rhymeworm's Bite environment, then consider bringing domains to cancel their domains earlier than they would want. So I guess in this case, I'm not too overall worried about that, and I'm okay with navigating around a Rhymeworm Bite's domains already. But having a domain in your back pocket is always a nice way when you find yourself in a matchup that also has them to counter them, especially if you can justify bringing it for good benefit on your side. But here, I like the fact that this staggers no matter what, whereas over here, Poison Traps needed a dice roll to go off of. There were more instances where it could come into effect, but here we're assigning a stagger at minimum. We're potentially dealing a damage. I'm pretending that that's never coming up, but it will at some point in time, and that'll be exciting. And it is restricted to these specific fighters, so this could end up being a draw one. So this can also improve reliability of the deck, both across our scoring, if we keep that stagger card, and it's looking more and more likely that we will, as well as draw reliability if these fighters are down. So, sweep the leg. Choose 1 enemy fighter that is adjacent to 1 or more friendly fighters. Stagger the chosen fighter. Man, they have a lot of stagger tech, don't they? We're going to pass on this one. We can always use an action to do similar, and we have the Parasite, so we really only need to stagger for scoring. So we're going to pass on sweep the leg. In fact, we might end up weeding out Spitting Cobra, but we'll see. It's going to depend on it's going to depend on how comfortable I feel about scoring that card. We have the Iron Paw. The first time a friendly assassin is dealt damage in the next activation, the damage dealt is reduced to 1. Forgot about this one. Wow. Just take all the damage dealt to 1 in the next. So, I mean, it's the first time dealt, but very often that's the most amount of damage that's going to be dealt is going to be dealt from that first blow in an activation. Ooh, interesting. Okay. Way of the Slinking Rat. Play this after a friendly fighter's attack action that took the target out of action. Place that friendly fighter on a starting hex in your territory. Play this after friendly fighters. Oh, I see. So this teleports you away. So a friendly fighter's attack action that took the target out. So you killed somebody, and then placed that friendly fighter, the one that did the killing, on a starting hex in your territory. So a bounce out card. I don't think we have room for it. I like it. I think if we were playing towards that one objective where we needed less fighters in their territory, we only need the one fighter in their territory that has our Hungering Parasite, then maybe this kind of helps clear the zone. But overall, I don't think we actually need this. I do like the repositioning aspect of it, but I just don't think it's going to win out over most of what we have left. So I don't know how much breakage we're going to bring in. So there's a few cards in here that are just related to breaking the Parasite. So a Curse Divided, choose a fighter that has one or more Bane of Heroes upgrades that is adjacent to one or more enemy fighters. Break that fighter's Bane of Heroes upgrade. So we've created an adjacency with either our fighters or theirs. Choose a fighter. What's interesting about a Curse Divided, something I found as I've been playing Bloodthirsty Hosts, is one or more Bane of Heroes upgrades. So I almost wish that there was some sort of like demarcation on the card that was like, hey, this works on either Bane of Heroes. Like as a visual indicator, like works on both. Because this is one of those cards. So if you ever saw an adjacency formed against the mirror match, whether it was one that they unintentionally made themselves with their friendly fighters, maybe you batted with drive back somebody into one of their fighters. Once that adjacency is there, you can break either yours or theirs. And that can, I mean, they can always put it right back. But yeah, does that matter too much? I don't know when that would matter too much. But you can break it. It's available to you. Realizing like that's not as exciting. I don't know. I've seen it happen. There was definitely a use case where I was surprised that somebody used Curse Divided on me. I was like, why? How dare? You know, sort of a moment because I had created adjacencies. Okay. Anyways, on to the next. So for now, we're not going to take this. I don't run this in Bloodthirsty Hosts, mainly because they have some other in-house cards that can do breaking. But we are at 7 gambits already. I think maybe one of these I'm okay to leave at home. So we really only have room for like 3-4. And so we're going to kind of have to feel out how important breaking is to us. On-demand breaking it. I'm not certain it's all too important. So Allure of Power. Choose a fighter that has one or more Bane of Heroes upgrades that is on an objective. Break that fighter's Bane of Heroes upgrades. So again, we're going to pass. And when I say not that important, let me clarify that I mean not that important in our gambits. There are multiple upgrades that will be taking that break. In my Vamp deck, most of the breaking occurs because upgrades made it happen, not because gambits made it happen. Malefic Siphon. This is something we're definitely going to take. Choose one fighter with your Warband's Bane of Heroes upgrade. Heal one, the chosen fighter. Then choose another fighter within 3 hexes of that fighter. Deal 1 damage to the other chosen fighter. So this is not only a heal, but a ping. Thankfully, you can only do the ping if you can do the heal. But you can figure out ways to arrange this. You could even run a lethal if you wanted to go that route when it came to how you were going to score Deadly Influence. Maybe you have Malefic Siphon in your hand. You run through the lethal, which is going to guarantee you Deadly Influence instead of having to go through a snare hex. and then transfer the damage as soon as you hit power. There you go. So that's a pretty nasty way to do it, and guarantee it. What's interesting about Deadly Influence, I just realized that I think you can barge to also do Deadly Influence. I would be shocked if you couldn't. And we're kind of leaning into that as something that we might need for scoring at some point in time. So that's a consideration to keep in mind. Opportunistic Leech. I mentioned I was going to call this out when we got to it, so here I am calling it out. Play this after a fighter ends a move action adjacent to the fighter that has your Warband's Bane of Heroes upgrade. So this could be any fighter that's accomplishing this with their move, but you react, you play this, break your Warband's Bane of Heroes upgrade. So this is how you score the worst version of Thwarted Destiny. Temporary Reprieve, I think is what it was called. This is the only other way outside of your Bane of Heroes fighter dying during that activation. All right, Pulse of Hunger. Choose a fighter that has your Warband's Bane of Heroes upgrade. Roll a magic dice for each fighter within 1 hex of the chosen fighter. On a roll of crit, deal 1 damage to that fighter, otherwise stagger that fighter. I know we're bringing essentially this exact card with like a range 3, and the potential to only happen on a single target. And we might end up leaving that at home, but I do think that it is not. I don't think it's necessary to bring this. In all other warbands, I wouldn't even consider it because you're potentially staggering fighters that are adjacent to your Bane of Heroes. Therefore, they're already considered to be staggered from a keyword standpoint. They just don't have the tokens on them. So this helps get the tokens on them. And this could be your own fighters too. So you could accidentally deal damage to or stagger your own fighters if you're clumping up. But the only reason I'm hesitant here is because we have some stagger goals in mind. But I think I'm gonna leave it. I think I'm gonna leave it. I prefer the other option that we've selected already. Cobra Technique. But I'm not even sure if Cobra Technique is going to make it into the build yet. So Sudden Swap. I really want to experiment with this here. I think this is one of the right places to experiment with this. I played against Lekit, if I'm pronouncing that right. Lekit is the Discord handle, an Iron Soul Condemners build, running Hungering Parasite and using Sudden Swap to great effect there. Being able to essentially slingshot your fighters that normally have 3 movement available to them. I think 4 if they inspire, but generally 3. Right, and so you can change a charge. Like if you can actually reach a charge, then you have the potential to, not drive that fighter back, sudden swap somebody in, get a second attack against them from that position, and you still haven't activated your newly appeared individual, and so they could then charge from that point as well. So we're going to try tricks like that here, tricks like that with minions, where our Hungering Parasite fighter is. Maybe even we push a fighter onto an objective early on or move them onto an objective. We do the work that we want to do, and then if we don't see our fighter die, then we sudden swap them onto the objective to help us with something like Far and Wide. I think there's going to be a lot of application here, especially when we're playing like KG in their territory. All right, so Tempting Lure. This is one of the other cards that's name I couldn't remember at the moment. But reaction, play this after a fighter's move action. Any fighter. So again, I almost wish that there was something visible here. Like, hey, this is both teams that you're able to play off of here. So play this after a fighter's move action. Choose a friendly fighter. Push the chosen fighter 1 hex closer to that fighter. If the fighter that made the move action has 1 or more of the Bane of Heroes upgrades, push the chosen fighter up to 3 hexes closer instead. So we could use this for a big push swing. I think that this card has a lot of utility based off the fact that it can work off of anybody's move. And so with that, I'm actually more tempted to take Tempting Lure than I am the push that's exclusive to the minions. So if it comes down to one or the other, didn't mean to bump that. If it comes down to one or the other, Tempting Lure is going to win out. Because we also have the Curse Demands, which is really good. Choose a fighter that has one or more Bane of Heroes upgrades. Push the chosen fighter 1 hex. So this can be your fighter. This can be their fighter. Whichever fighter has a Bane of Heroes upgrade. So also interesting in the mirror. The Curse and Powers. The first range 1 or range 2 attack action in the next activation step made by a friendly fighter has Grievous 1. Or +1 damage to the first attack action made by a friendly fighter in the next activation step instead if that fighter has one or more Bane of Heroes upgrades. I think we might take this. We'll talk a little bit more about this. This card I normally leave at home because we're talking about one attempt at the extra damage. But this could help us with one of the surges that we're bringing along. So this might actually squeak its way in. And yeah, we're going to have so much to cut. Stay tuned. This could indeed be our longest episode to date. It's What's with the Rats. Plague Pack was the Plague Pack has the record right now. And with Hungering Parasite. So apparently I can't rein in a Hungering Parasite episode. So Curse Hungers reaction. Play this during a friendly fighter's attack action after the defense roll. If the attack action would fail, the combat sequence ends and that fighter makes an attack action that must target the same enemy fighter. Large fighters and or fighters that do not have one or more Bane of Heroes upgrades cannot use this reaction. So with your Bane of Heroes fighter, one that is not large, in this case we really don't have to worry about that. I don't think we have +1 wounds to manage, but we'll take a look at that. We're able to react after a failed attack and try again. So yeah, we have 13. Okay. I thought that was going to be scarier. Like I thought maybe we were looking at like 15 cards we had to work through here. So I think our objectives are a little scarier. As we trim here, it'll definitely inform things here. Like the Curse and Powers is going to stick around probably if like Killer Supreme sticks around, and I think it will. But we'll take a look. So upgrades onto those. All right, so yeah, let's start with theirs again. Sometimes I'm tempted to start the other way around, but this is the realm of discovery, so I usually like to start with the side I'm least familiar with. At least that's my personal preference. So Deathmaster, +1 move. Rolls of double support are successes in this fighter's attack rolls. Wow. Restricted to your leader. So this can only go on your leader. That cranks our move up to 6. That's ridiculous. The fact, though, that we're getting double supports as successes, so we're cranking up the effectiveness of our attack. Yeah, on a swords attack as well. Now, swords attacks, you're generally looking for more crits. Usually when you have a worthwhile attack profile or like swords profile, I'm trying to not dunk on 2 swords profiles while also dunking on 2 swords profiles. But 3 or more swords, the idea is you have more chances at crits is really what it comes down to. But this kind of cranks it up to like 2 hammers, essentially just one all of a sudden where you're never going to be able to like double down if you get full support naturally. I think ultimately though, I like this. If our leader goes down, we have some drawing efficacy here. So yeah, let's move on to Ashen Throwing Stars. So this is another source of stagger. I take offense. 2 swords is great. You are the target audience. That was Walner. All right, so I don't know. I don't think this is going to make the cut, but having another way to add stagger, having another range profile, I think we're going to be more in your face than distanced. If we were going to a lot of the time I really like ranged attacks when we plan to stand in this like very specific spots. So if we have positioning concerns, whether those are all fighters aren't adjacent to each other, or we're on objectives and stuff like that. That can really help. It can also help when you hit that charged out status, which is why I haven't pulled it immediately from consideration. But if this becomes too lush with options, this will be an easy cut. Gas Mask. This fighter cannot be staggered, dealt damage by lethal hexes, and cannot be chosen or damaged by gambits. Snipe Pad Paw. Can't be staggered. Okay. Dealt damage by lethal hexes, and cannot be chosen or damaged by gambits. Wow. Okay. Well, I just found another fun synergy. Because I believe what happens is if you give, so you can still give upgrades to a fighter that has a cannot. So let's say you have this fighter cannot be on guard fighter, whether they have that ability naturally or they have an upgrade on them already that's doing that. And then you have an upgrade in your hand that says this fighter is on guard. You can give that to that fighter. You can give them that upgrade, but the cannot rule wins. So in this case, Gas Mask is going to win over the staggering that would normally be happening that you're taking on from the host. So this card is definitely coming in because this says if Pad Paw is rocking the host, he's shaking off the stagger that it's bringing along. That's really cool. All right, Merciless. +1 damage to this fighter's range 1 or range 2 attack actions if the target is staggered. I like that a lot here. Holy crap. Wow. Okay. So, do they currently have our Parasite and are getting up in your face? If the answer is yes, we're going to add +1 damage for that. Ooh, okay. And that also helps with Ashen throwing stars as well. Like from a do we bring this consideration. Prehensile Tail. You can reroll up to 2 attack dice in the attack rolls for this fighter's attack actions if this fighter has 1 or more attack action upgrades. Up to 2 attack dice in the attack rolls for this fighter's attack actions if this fighter has. Oh, wow. Wow. Okay. Is that our only attack action upgrade? There's one more. There's one more. Okay. Well, that makes this less exciting. We're gonna pass on this, especially since throwing stars are still on the edge-ish for me. But this is really cool. I think if we had a build where we were really leaning into bringing like 3 action upgrades, 4 action upgrades, I mean, this would be a shoe-in. Even if I had like 2 that I was super confident in, maybe. But 3, absolutely in. Ricocheting Triscale. After this fighter's Tri-Fang, Triscale, and net attack action, if it succeeded, choose 1 other enemy fighter within 2 hexes of the target. Deal 1 damage to the chosen fighter. So this is a Creep Kin Whisper card. Ricochet as a reaction. So, I see. What a mouthful. So if this attack hits or misses, which was it? If it succeeded, okay. So hit is kind of what I meant there. Choose 1 other enemy fighter within 2 hexes of the target. Deal 1 damage to the chosen fighter. I mean, hey, let's try that on for size. I like the sound of it. That seems like a fun card to play around with. The weird thing is the within 2. I just don't know how much we're gonna see like this come in like full effect. But I'm at least entertaining it for now. Shadowpaw. Action. Place this fighter in an empty hex adjacent to an enemy fighter. Then give this fighter 1 move token and break this card. No. Not for an action. Not in this deck. Not with how fast we are. I can spend an action getting there. I mean, the one time... No, because we can move. We can move now if we're charged out. I was going to say, does this change at all if we consider it in the lens of charged out? No. I'm not going to take Shadowpaw. Spy Rats. That is hilarious. That imagery is fantastic. Okay, reaction. So this is a Kin Whisper only card. Use this after an activation step in which one or more opponents drew one or more cards, or after a power step in which one or more opponents drew one or more cards. Choose one fighter. If you choose a friendly fighter, give the chosen fighter one guard token. If you choose an enemy fighter, stagger the chosen fighter. So activations late game. This puts pressure on those. This is a weird card because when is it going to do the most for you? So it's going to do the most for you when they're salvaging. I think that's absolutely the best application here, is during a power step they're salvaging something, or they're having to venture or strategize. They're probably, if it's early game and they're venturing, it's probably the very start of the game. Probably don't have this out yet. Otherwise, there's not much more for them to do, and therefore there's probably not much reason to be going on guard on your side. So I think we can leave Spy Rats at home, and I don't think we need the stagger assistance. So supernatural agility, +1 defense in-house. We can go up to 3 defense. Yes, please. Holy crap, we're bringing that. Wow. All right. And then the Face Gouger Fangs. Range 1, 2 hammers for 2 damage. This fighter has the flying trait. So, can I give that to anybody? Let's look back at that. Yeah, I can give that to anybody. We're going to entertain that. We might give this to a minion. It has ensnare too. I mean, it's good damage, it's good accuracy, and ensnare. Flying traits feels a little ridiculous. I'm probably not going to need that much. But the fact that it also kind of like shoehorns it onto anybody on my team means like I can just give this to somebody if I need to like fly over a zombie line. I don't know why I would need to fly over a zombie line. T-minus 30 seconds before Wellner catches up to live and hits up chat here. Despairing Strength. So, I mean, I jumped straight over Careful Aim. The reason I jumped straight over Careful Aim is because we do have to give this over to we have to give the Parasite over to the opponent. We're not bringing many ways to break it. We had far more impressive offerings in the upgrades than I expected. I can probably whittle that down to like 5 or 4 of theirs. But ultimately, probably not over Careful Aim. Like, I'm probably not picking Careful Aim over them. So this is, you can re-roll 1 attack dice in this fighter's attack rolls if the target has 2 or more wound counters. If the target of this fighter's attack actions has 1 or more Bane of Heroes upgrades, +1 dice to this fighter's attack actions. So if they're damaged already, I actually always forget this first part. You can reroll 1 attack in this fighter's attack. The target has 2 or more. So if they're damaged already, we can reroll against them. That might be attractive. And then if we give the Bane of Heroes over to them, we get +1 dice. And in a mirror, it's +1 dice against their Bane of Heroes. Okay, maybe I was a little hard on this. Maybe we consider this, if nothing else, for the reroll on a wounded target. But I'm not sure it makes the cut yet. Despairing Strength, because, like, for example, I want this to make the cut. We have multiple... Yeah, so like either of these two, we have 3 dice. So I don't even mind giving this to... I don't mind giving Despairing Strength to these fighters that are range 1. Mainly these two. Because they have a good chance at critting and just dealing the 1 damage from having Grievous. It's also another way to potentially add Grievous to our... Like, it's another source of Grievous for scoring purposes. And obviously it's +1 if we're talking about the Bane of Heroes fighter. But I wanted to kind of like entertain, like, what if I don't get this on the Bane of Heroes fighter? Normally, the 2 things that you have to think about with Despairing Strength are, what if I needed to give this to somebody else? Like, my Bane of Heroes fighter doesn't have the range. And that I should have led with, and the range. You have to worry about range 1, which means you also have to worry about Wicked Aim. So, like, the same fighter that has Wicked Aim can't benefit from Despairing Strength. Which is really good balance, but something to keep in mind. And I think in this build, I'm going to lean more towards Despairing Strength than I am Wicked Aim. I think Wicked Aim might not make it into this build, which is really weird. But we'll see. Divine Fortitude is something I want to bring along. It's going to allow us to break the Bane. It's going to allow us to potentially not take damage from the Bane. And it's going to give us a vehicle to inspire if we feel that that is something that we need to do. So I really want to take this card. So for now, it's at least in considerations for trim. Frenetic Efforts, reaction, use this after this fighter makes a stun action. Push this fighter 1 hex. This is stun action as part of if it's not part of a super action. However, there's an errata. This does not work for super actions, specifically Barge, obviously. Push this fighter 1 hex. After that, push if this fighter has 1 or more Bane of Heroes upgrades. This fighter makes a range 1 attack action. I don't think we're going to be using this. You really have to do some gymnastics to think about the scenarios where this is going to be like hyper effective. You have to like be able to stun somebody, push 1, and that push be meaningful, like a meaningful reposition, and then you range 1 attack, probably that same target in most cases. But like ideally, I suppose the thought process here is that you would then attack somebody else. So anyways, we don't need to spend any time on this card. This card went from like S tier to like never include tier real fast with an errata. Furybound Leaps. If this fighter has 1 or more Bane of Heroes upgrades, this fighter has the flying trait. We don't need the flying trait. So what else can this offer? Use this after this fighter makes a Barge super action. Okay, I'm listening. Remove 1 of this fighter's move tokens. I don't think it makes the cut, but this is a warband where I am considering using Barge. So let's entertain it. This is early on the chopping block. Instinctive Reprisal. Use this during an enemy fighter's successful attack action that targeted this fighter. After the deal damage step, if the attacker is adjacent to this fighter, deal 1 damage to the attacker. If this fighter has 1 or more Bane of Heroes upgrades, roll 1 attack dice on a roll of Hammer. Deal 2 damage instead. I think I'd rather take this over Furybound Leaps. Let's just cut Furybound Leaps now. We're not taking it. It is interesting, but not interesting enough. I don't think. Instinctive Reprisal. What I like about this is some of the tricks that we have available to us too. I don't normally like for example, I'd have to double look at the language, but could we also pass the successful attack off to our minion and then react with this? I don't know. But I like that the threat that this puts. Like anytime you attack me, if you can't kill me, I'm dealing damage back. And even if you can kill me, I'm still like, because this is after the deal damage step, not after the out of action check. So if you only have adjacent capabilities, you're taking damage when you take down this fighter, and potentially too. It's definitely not the best tool in the toolkit, but it's an interesting like putting pressure on them in the way of bad options tool. All right, Stolen Vigor. Reaction, use this after this fighter's second or subsequent activation in a phase. Remove 1 of this fighter's move tokens. This might be more useful in the sense of this might be more useful than Furybound Leaps, because we could, like one of those activations could be a Barge, and then, I don't know, like a standing attack, and then react, get rid of the move, now be able to charge. As this fighter has 1 or more Bane of Heroes upgrades, you can remove 1 of this fighter's charge tokens instead if you do break this card. We'll consider it. Tenacious Resilience. This card I want to bring for sure. I've been loving this card with the vamps. This has been errated so that this, I don't know if the word reaction is anywhere on it now. I think it's all musts. But at the very least, this top one is a must. Use this after you give this upgrade to a fighter that has 1 or more Bane of Heroes upgrades. Break this fighter's Bane of Heroes upgrades. Let's see. Are they both? We'll just double check real quick. And I can definitely tell already. Congratulations, all. We made it to the longest episode I've ever done. Whether I enjoy that achievement or not. All right. So, yeah. They remove the word reaction from this card entirely. So both parts are musts now. But I still think it's good because we can use it for breaking when we need to, and we can use it for healing when we need to. Vint! It's a good choice, 100%. Thanks, man. Vint is a Skaven-aholic, so I'm not too shocked that if he was going to tune in an episode, this is the one. Weakened Soul. This upgrade can be given to enemies. -1 wounds to a minimum of 1. This upgrade cannot be given to a fighter that does not have one or more Bane of Heroes upgrades. Reaction, use this after a fighter is given the Bane of Heroes upgrade. Give that fighter this upgrade. Do not spend any glory points when you do so. This is key to like a giveaway deck where you're giving away the Bane. I think this is key to a deck where you're breaking the Bane a lot. You have a lot of options for breakage. It makes a lot of sense in the picture of the Rivals deck. I'm not sure it makes a lot of sense here. We've foregone most of the ways that we self-break, except for in the upgrade categories. So the only way to give it away is for us to have an adjacency when one of our fighters dies. And then we also have to work on getting it back. So we're not creating enough opportunity space to have a card like this just hanging out in our deck. I don't think so anyways. It's one I'm going to consider. Try to think about a lot while I'm doing the field report testing, and I'll get back to you. But for now, we're definitely going to leave it behind. And Wicked Aim. So we've got some range 3 already that if we were to bring this up to range 4, yeah, after this fighter makes a range 4 attack action, break this card. So like generally you want to use this to bump up range 1, right? But I think in this case, we kind of just want to keep the pressure on. We want to get in people's faces. Like, yes, it's really good for if you have a range 1 fighter that you're going to reactivate over and over again. But it does counterbalance against Despairing Strength. I don't know. You know what? I think it'd probably be foolish for me not to bring it, just given the sense that, like, it goes hard when you have a charged out fighter. Yes, it turns off Despairing Strength once both are on the same fighter, but you know, there's enough time over the course of a game where there's opportunity space for them both to have their shine and potentially be on different fighters, or at least on the same fighter at different times. So yeah, we'll try to fit it in here. I think it only makes sense to do so. All right, so we're gonna take this back a little bit. The zoom that we had, I was trying a larger zoom in for reading capability on your screen at home or on the go. And now we're going to enter the trim. So we've hit the 2-hour mark. So if you'll give me one moment, I just want to double check and make sure that I can continue on today. So hold on, please. All right, and we're back. We will continue the episode. We will complete the trim, the name, and bid you all a fine rest of the day. So for this trim, it will be challenging. So we're going to try to make it quick. We're going to try to focus this particular deck more on the field report than the trim. And that kind of opens up more as an option too, when we start looking at the final, like what the decks build being the build that we arrive at after playtesting, after the field report. So let's get this to a point that we're comfortable with to try together. I'd be, again, delighted to hear how testing this deck goes on your side. That always makes my day. Like Caiaphas Kane writing in and letting me know how testing went with Grass-Trax Despoilers plus Voidcurse Thralls. It gives me fuel and motivation to be here doing this with you. I love the amount of community engagement that has come out of this show. And 20 episodes in, I don't know if I would have like the pull, the push to keep going and doing this if it wasn't for all of you that have wrote in and made the show like feel very worth doing. So major thank you to all of you that have done so. And let's dive in. So I think first and foremost, let's focus in on our objectives that should inform the rest of the picture. So Daggers in the Dark, immediately after a staggered enemy fighter is taken out of action. Yeah, this makes 100% as the kill surge that we take when we're hanging with the Parasite. Killer Supreme, I think I'm pretty comfortable with this as well. Yes, we're looking for a crit. Excuse me. But we have, I think, plenty of opportunity to make this happen. Different ways to add Grievous to attacks, whether that's Fighters Inspiring or different things that we're bringing along. So I think this card is one that's actually going to really inform the Gambits and upgrades, which is something to consider. Like, is this worth the tax? And at least for testing, we're going to see, is this worth the tax? So committing to this as part of the test. Way of the Hidden Paw. So our leader had to support. So this is I'm iffy. Our leader is such a key character that, you know, if our leader goes down, you know, we're breaking this 2 glory surge. But we have so many different ways to push fighters around. So, you know, closing for the kill could help make that happen. Misplaced Optimism could help make that happen. I think we're going to get rid of Probing Attack. Not sure yet. I value pushes pretty strongly, so we'll see if it outvalues other cards. But right now, like I've already said, that Tempting Lure is going to win out over it, right? And Tempting Lure is another thing in here that can help with that. Sudden Swap could. Maybe we have an adjacency somewhere on the map, and we sudden swap, so now our leader is the one in the adjacency. So we have a bunch of different ways, and heck, you know, we get somebody in position for it, and then all of a sudden, you know, our leader in position for it, and then we Skittering Blur, and we're like, hey, you're stuck here. You can't really do anything about my leader for this next activation. So, and this is just a, I thought this was just a successful attack with that leader positioning. This is also a kill surge. An enemy fighter is taken out of action by a friendly fighter's attack action. I like this. Let's look at the rest. This is on the cutting block. It would have been way too strong if it was just a successful attack. So I totally respect that it's a kill surge. That's fine. Way of the Lashing Tail scores immediately after an activation step. If 3 or more friendly fighters are adjacent to the same enemy fighter. So this can be after our activation. So I think that this is more in my control than Way of the Hidden Paw. So I think we're going to try this. Way of the Lashing Tail. Yeah, we're going to try this. All right. I think this card is going to be tough. We'll see how it goes. Things like Tempting Lure are going to be great ways to get this payoff. Because if we can create an adjacency and then go into a turn with like our Hungering Parasite Fighter, charge our Hungering Parasite Fighter around, you know, the back of them or something like that, to create an adjacency and then push another one a whole 3 in. It's okay if we don't kill him, you know, like as long as we don't kill him, right? We have to keep him alive. Yeah, we have to keep him alive. At least, you know, we're scoring 2 glory off of that, and they're probably pretty doomed in that position. So I think I'm okay with trying this out. I'm really curious if I find later that we could bring both, that we could really push for both. Like that's another option that I'm kind of discounting right now, but as we test, I'll be excited to say like, hey, is the answer bring both, or did I mess up and I brought the harder of the two? So let's see, or the more unlikely of the two. Let's see. So Driven by the Curse is really good. Deadly Influence is really good. So these 5 I'm feeling pretty good about. At least these. Let's see. Clutches of Evil, I wanted to work that out. So we're going to work that out right now. Okay, cool. We're not bringing enough breakage to justify bringing that card. So our surges are well aligned. So then our end phase here, we can get rid of the difficult or the more difficult ones. So let's see. I mean, I think Unsurprising Fate is totally fine, but Infiltrate their lair is harder for sure than Beyond Exhausted. So we can cut that. So we still have to cut 3. This is interesting. You know, we could cut, let's see. So I put a lot of focus into Dazed and Confused. Is it worth the trouble? Let's see what else we had. Impressive Students, I was nervous about. I think I'm still nervous about. I think we can cut Impressive Students. Cursed Tyrant, I'm not worried about. Powerful Pawn, I'm a little worried about. So I think we can start cutting some of that. We can cut Powerful Pawn. We can cut Impressive Students. So let's keep Dazed and Confused and some of our stagger tech to support this. I like that it's more of them are staggered. Well, have staggered tokens, you know, than don't. So we can also, I could be wrong. I'm excited to find out. But because you have to think to yourself, so like as we're reducing the numbers of them to help with this equation, we're taking one away from the equation, but we're not adding stagger to parts of that equation. So we'll see. So this is, by bringing this, that's going to mean that we're bringing Spinning Cobra Technique. And I think there was one other one, or did I? Maybe I left it out. I think I was thinking of Throwing Stars. So we might bring Throwing Stars to help. Unsure. We do have 4 that we have to weed out of here, and this is not. I mean, if it helps with a 2-pointer, that helps keep it in. So maybe. But all right. Enough belaboring. We know that Dazed and Confused is tenuous, but you know, when we measure the tenuousness of it over Powerful Pawn, we want to kill their leader, so we're eliminating that option from Powerful Pawn. We don't really have good breakage to lean into that part of that side anyways, so that relies on our leader being alive and being the fighter with the Parasite at that time and in their territory. That's probably where our leader is going to be, but will they have the Parasite at that time, and will they be alive? So that makes Powerful Pawn more tenuous. And then the other one that we cut is 2 successful attacks from minions. That means that not only do we have to attempt 2 attacks with minions, but we have to succeed both of them. So I definitely feel like that's the lowest of the 3. So Dazed and Confused is the more reliable of the 3 in my mind at this time. So Unsurprising Fate, I think, is pretty doable, or pretty bound to happen pretty quickly. It would be great if this isn't scoring. So let's look at what else. But I mean, hopefully we get rid of a 1-pointer here. Like I had already kind of eyed that Cursed Tyrant was one of our 2 points Far and Wide is essentially a pseudo 2-point that we're kind of committing to at this time. Beyond Exhausted. So Way of the Striking Fang, I think, is level 1. So like right now it's between Surprising Fate or Way of the Striking Fang. So have one of our minions, our 2 healthers, died. We have a card that literally kills them, if we don't want to take an attack on, or have we succeeded in our leader assassination. I think it's probably more likely we've lost a minion along the line. We could even dangle them. So there we go. We have our 12 objectives. We are focused up on what we're trying to do. Total glory here of 17 with a flex into 18 on Far and Wide, and then obviously any bounties that we're able to stack on top of that. This is a really healthy floor. I'm excited about this. So closing for the kill, absolutely staying. Misplaced optimism in. So we have to mark 3. So what 3? I think we've already highlighted probing as possibly out. Choose one friendly minion that is within 2 hexes of that assassin. The minion is taken out of action. So is this any attack, or does it have to be one that was going to kill? If it succeeds, so it doesn't have to be doing lethal. Oh, that's so good. So we can shake off any attack that we want to here. So we're definitely keeping redirected attack, skittering blur. This is, we're drawing a line from this to Killer Supreme. No, we're drawing a line from this to Dazed and Confused. So we want to keep spitting Cobra Technique. And I think I want the damage reduction option here. So far, probing attack is definitely our weakest piece. I think that the next weakest piece is actually... Oof, this is tough. Well, okay. So that means probing attack is gone. Push each friendly minion up to 1. Up to 2 instead if after that push that minion is adjacent to one or more enemy fighters. It can help with Way of the Lashing Tail though. It's redundancy for 2 glory. It's really good redundancy. Let's see. Okay. Do we really need this? Can we avoid spitting Cobra Technique? I think we have to bring it. Do we get rid of Way of the Iron Paw then? Maybe. I think we have to get rid of Way of the Iron Paw. I want to play with Sudden Swap just because I haven't yet, and I think we can really do some creative things with it. But it's been cut before just for room purposes. Okay. We're going to get rid of Way of the Iron Paw. We're going to... So this is giving us Grievous. Range 1 or range 2 in the next activation have Grievous. So this can bump up Killer Supreme's ability early. Or potentially do an extra damage. Like I think this is probably good. Because we have either mode that we can lean on and be happy with. Especially if the attack goes off. So it's the first attack made. So like the Curse Hungers doesn't work on it. The Curse Hungers is obviously pretty attractive because you want to make sure that this hits. I've actually found, I mean, you're getting a reroll already. Yeah, your attack can miss sometimes, and like the ability to do it over again is pretty crazy. But I mean, we're not moving our Parasite around too much, so this has to be like we might only get 1 or 2 shots at this around, and then I find that you end up holding this card. Like if you only had that 1 shot that round, then this is stuck in hand. And so you'll hold it because it's super powerful. You'll hold it in a round 2. If it can push an attack over, it's worth it, right? But I think here we might entertain leaving it home. See if I regret that. That's the joy of testing. You can check on things that you can see, like, is this a crutch I don't need, right? Like you pull it away from yourself and test, like, will I regret this? Man, I'm coming back to probably getting rid of probing attack, even though I really don't want to. So 1, 2, how many pushes do we have? Maybe this will talk me out of it. So probing would be 3. And then tempting lure is 4. Curse demands is 5. I mean, half of our stuff is push. Sudden swap has less application, but it does really help with far and wide, as well as, you know, being able to keep a target, or like slingshot, or keep somebody safe in certain matchups. So I don't want to get rid of it. I really want to test it. I haven't got to test it much. Let's try cutting probing attack. Or dazing. Yeah, let's try cutting probing attack. Okay. Upgrade 14. So we just need to cut 4 of these. So we're definitely keeping Merciless. So Ashen Throwing Star, marked. Consider it marked. Merciless, Supernatural Agility. These are keeps. Gas Mask is a keep. What do we have that's all restricted? So we have Leader, Pad Paw, and Kin Whisper. This card might be more cute than good. I mean, I like it, don't get me wrong, but it is a ranged attack and kind of a heavy lean into melee build. So I think we can probably cut this pretty safely. And then I think we had some cards that I was like trying to justify the inclusion of. So Stolen Vigor, I don't know if I really need to test. I feel like during testing, I don't need to have Stolen Vigor in hand to like think about if it would be helpful. So this one can be part of the field report, but on the other side of the field report, like I'll keep it in mind. I'll actually bring it with me, have it set aside. Like, could I have gotten mileage out of Stolen Vigor? And I'll be thinking about that. Instinctive Reprisal is kind of a hit back. So it's not helping us offensively. It's helping us present bad options. Careful Aim could accidentally, like in a good way, help us with Killer Supreme. So with the reroll when we're attacking a wounded target. Ensnare plus Flying. I think I really like Face Gouge or Fangs. I think we're going to keep those. So I still got to get rid of a couple. So do we get rid of Ashen Throwing Stars? Or do we keep that for the staggering? Let's get rid of Ricochet for sure. I don't know. I kind of want to. I want to test without Wicked Aim. I have so many pushes. Let's test without Wicked Aim. That sounds crazy, but let's see. Let's keep this in here. It feels like, I mean, this is going to be mostly fueled by the Parasite. But I don't initially mind having something that can help me with my 2-pointer. So let's keep this. And that, I feel better knowing, so I'm getting rid of Wicked Aim, which is a range extender that can really help me when I'm charged out. But maybe I'm charged out and I have this instead, and not only is this going to help me like put damage down and make use of my actions in a meaningful way, but it's also potentially staggering my target for me as well, and going towards Dazed and Confused. So I think if I had to pick Wicked Aim or this, with Dazed and Confused being in my scoring pile, this is the play. So okay, that feels good. I did end up bringing 2 attack profiles. There was that crazy reroll card. Is it better than Careful Aim? I'll go look. I mean, it was restricted. What was the crazy reroll card? Prehensile Tail. Up to 2 attack dice in the attack rolls for this fighter's attack actions if this fighter has 1 or more attack action upgrades. It doesn't even, it's not fighter restricted. Wow. Ooh, okay. I think we'll try it, which means we have more to try to filter out. I mean, Gas Mask is super in. I like Death Master, but we're going to cut it. We're going to create so many adjacencies and opportunities, I think, to already increase our accuracy. That might be overkill, especially for like compared to the other value we can fit into some of these slots. And we might be able to pull Careful Aim out then. Yeah, let's pull Careful Aim out because it's going to be rare. Oh, it could be fun. What would so I think right now it's between Reprisal and Careful Aim. The one thing about Tenacious Resilience is it does break itself and count against Cursed Tyrant. So this is a pretty difficult card. But I do want some ability to move the Bane the Bane of Heroes around. And so that's also helping me with that goal and potentially being a big heal. I think it stays. So I think it's between Instinctive Reprisal and Careful Aim right now. And you know what? Let's pick up Careful Aim. I want to test it. All right. So here we are. We've arrived at the end of the build, and we just need a good name, and we'll call it a wrap. So does anybody have any good names that they want to toss at this deck? Definitely always open to that in chat. So anytime you're watching the show, if you're thinking like, oh, I have a great name for this, or a name I want to like brainstorm into chat, absolutely toss it there. That's always fun when I get to riff off of what's tossed there. Daggers in the Dark is a really fun like starting point. Like that's the surge at the top, so it just caught my attention. It's a little long-winded. Longest name we've had so far was Stampede of the Void Bellow. Let's see, Parasites in the Dark. Maybe Parasites in the Dark. Banes in the Dark. Oh, ooh, there's something. Banes of Leaders, the Bane of Leaders. Yeah, something like that. Because it's an assassination mission. Yeah. Leader's Bane. I think Leader's Bane is the name of this squad. I like that quite a bit. Leader's Bane. Yeah, I enjoy the riffing off of Daggers in the Dark we got here. We got Parasites in the Dark, Whispers in the Dark, like the 80s song. Is that 80s? Huh. Sure, I'll take your word for it. But we're going to call this deck Leader's Bane. And move on from there. Yeah. All right. Cemented. So it should be plural. It should be plural. Hold please. Leader's Bane. There we are. It doesn't matter who you are or how many leaders you have. We are the bane of them. The Skittershank Clawpack. All right. Well, thank you a ton for hanging out through today's episode, today's session. And this deck, so I'm going to add it to the description below. If you would like to check it out, it'll be right there for you. Additionally, it's going to be uploaded to the Battle Mallet's Nemesis library, as is all of the decks we do here on the show. So if you ever want to give one a try, definitely go check out their library and check a deck out. Let me know how you like it. So you can best reach me in the comments below or on the Mortal Realms Discord. You can check out all the Mortal Realms Network has to offer, including a link to our Discord at themortalrealms.com. Thank you for watching. Hope to see you next week. I've been Skylar, and this has been What the Decks.